Your airplane is a baddie with a lot of wagging that she dragging. Let's talk about the different types of drag. Let go! Regardless of how beautiful your airplane is and how nicely she's shaped, there's always going to be two types of drag impacting your flight at all times. We're going to go over the two different types of drag and how they affect you as a pilot. Let go! Boom, so check it. The first type of drag we want to talk about is parasite drag. And parasite drag can be simply defined as anything on the aircraft that's attached to the aircraft that's causing drag while you're flying through the air. If this is you right here flying and swinging and banging that thing, dipping through the sky, hey, you got it leaning to the side, you're doing your thing. So as you're flying through the air real fast, just think to yourself, what attached to this aircraft can cause drag? The antennas, the wings, the landing gear, all these are objects on this plane that can cause drag as you're going through the air and it meeting the relative wind. So with that being said, it's causing parasite drag. And this is the simple definition of what parasite drag is. The main key you want to understand about parasite drag is that it increases 4 times the airspeed increase. So say for instance, if you're just floating and cruising along and you increase your airspeed by 10%, then you've just increased your parasite drag by 40%. Boom, so check it. The second type of drag is induced drag. Induced drag is also very simple to understand because we've already covered a few things that's going to help you understand it. One of those things being wingtip vortices. Understanding exactly what creates lift on the airplane and then what's happening with that wingtip vortices on the leading edge of that wing, of course, and that is going to be what's creating that drag. For example, you floating that thing through the sky, you swinging and banging, doing what you do. What's keeping this aircraft lifted? We've already talked about the laws of lift, the theories of lift. Of course, we know we got our boy Newton and we got, of course, our boy Bernoulli that tells us exactly why we fly the airplane and what's happening with the pressure system on the wing. We got the low pressure on top and we got the high pressure on the bottom. That's what's keeping us elevated, right? And that high pressure is trying to meet that low pressure system. That's what's keeping us elevated at the top. And as it's happening, the air is continuing to circulating around those wings. Where it's getting pushed onto the top and it's making that wing go higher and higher and higher. But when it gets to the edge right here, what it's doing is, again, we're looping. That's all it's doing. It's doing like a looping form on the edge as that high pressure system is trying to meet that low pressure system. And that looping effect that's happening on the end, that circular kind of motion going inward, outward, and inward is creating a wingtip vortices on the end of the plane, and that leads to a lot of different things, and that leads to like a downwash where the airplane is kind of like going against that because it's going, as you can see, against the direction of flight. The wingtip vortices is going in this direction, the flight is going in this direction. That's creating what? Drag. That is the definition of induced drag. All it is, wingtip vortices creating that downwash on the plane and getting that induced drag. The easy way to kind of remember these two, parasite drag is something that is living on a certain organism. The word parasite, that's the definition of it, where something that's living on the plane, landing gear, wings, the antenna, creating that parasite drag. And then we flip it and we say, okay, what's induced drag? Induced drag is being induced by something. It's being induced and influenced and persuaded by lift and everything that's happening, of course, with the wingtip vortices on the edge of the plane, creating that drag. That's how you can remember those two. One, living and breathing organisms living on the plane, induced drag, being induced by something or persuaded or influenced by something that's happening while we're floating that thing through the sky, that's creating drag. Keys about the drag that you want to kind of make sure you really understand is that you ever think to yourself, why on your airplane did they pick a certain glide speed? Why when you look in your POH, it tells you the glide speed of that aircraft? That glide speed is picked because they basically compared the differences between parasite drag and induced drag, and they picked a sweet spot on that aircraft because they understand that if you go any faster than this, whatever that designated glide speed is, then you're going to either be increasing your parasite drag or increasing your induced drag. But this speed that they designated and that they selected, that's the sweet spot where you can glide through the air for as long as possible without giving it any more power or anything that you're doing. That's why that is picked in the first place, and that's why glide speed is the way it is on your plane. It's the sweet spot between induced drag and parasite drag. Boom! You know the one position that you can be in to reduce induced drag? Ground effect, baby. Hey, we in ground effect, baby. When you get into ground effect and you're really low to the ground like that and you just slide that thing across the runway in ground effect, you've essentially reduced induced drag. Because remember, induced drag is that wingtip vortices coming off that wing. But since you're so low to the ground, they don't have anywhere to go. When they're just spinning off the bottom of that off that wing, coming down to the ground, and they're so low to the ground, there's nowhere for them to go to create a significant amount of drag. So you've reduced the amount of induced drag simply by being low to the earth, creeping and crawling that thing in ground effect. That's one of the beauties about it. And you've noticed this sometimes because you can look at your airspeed and you can notice that even though you at a real slow airspeed, you still haven't stalled because you're in ground effect. Whereas if you were at that same airspeed in regular flight, normal flight in the air, it would already been at a stalling risk at that time, simply because of the wingtip vortices coming from it and having that more induced drag. So this is kind of how you can play around with reducing the induced drag on the aircraft. And then when you come in for a landing, when you're in ground effect, as you riding that thing and your eyes are down the runway, glance at that airspeed indicator and see where it is sometime while you're holding off before you land. Oftentimes it's getting real slow and you're still not at it still not has installed yet. And that's because the induced drag has been reduced. Boom! When you're thinking about parasite drag, of course, you know that that's the objects on the plane that are causing that form of drag. And under that category of parasite drag, there are 3 subcategories that you want to be aware of. The first one is form drag. So after you got parasite drag and induced drag, those are your 2 main obstacles. Once you get up under parasite drag, you have 3 subcategories under there. And that first one we're going to talk about is form drag. Form drag is simply just a matter of the object itself, the form of the plane, the shape of the plane is causing you to have drag. Think about it along these lines. Think about it like a high performance sports car. A high performance sports car is usually very sleek. It's usually very smooth and it's designed to be the good streamline along the streets, having very little drag. Whereas something like a Jeep or SUV has the kind of shape that it picks up a lot of drag. The wind just doesn't hit it at the same angles that performance sports car is hitting. The same exact thing. That's the difference in what you got to be aware of with form drag. The form of this plane. Certain planes are just going to be a little bit more sleek and smooth through the air. Other planes, the shape of them are going to cause a significant amount of drag when it comes to form drag under the category of parasite drag. The second subcategory under parasite drag is called interference drag. In this one here, you can reference something in the previous videos that we talked about when we talked about those left turning tendencies. One of those left turning tendencies we talked about was spiraling slipstream. And that was simply when the propeller is spinning. You're sitting in the cockpit. From this angle right here, you're looking at your plane and that propeller is spinning in a clockwise motion. And what it's doing is it's causing air to go around, of course, the aircraft in a spiraling area and hit the tail from the left side, creating that left turning tendency. Remember, these left turning tendencies, they don't just impact you on the ground, they impact you in the air as well. The whole time you're operating the aircraft, you got to be worried about these left turning tendencies. With that being said, how does that refer to, of course, parasite drag and interference drag, the one that we're talking about right now? Because you have that happening throughout the air. The propeller is creating that spiraling slipstream, right? But you also have air that's just free flowing right over the wings, just as normal. As you're going through the air coming over the wings in a nice free stream. And then you also have that spiraling effect where those 2 different things can interfere with one another as they circulate throughout the aircraft. If you have air just flowing freely over the wings and then you have air spiraling around the aircraft in a spiraling flip stream, they can interfere with each other. And when they interfere with each other, they can cause drag. And that's called interference drag. Hey, boom, check it. And the last form of parasite drag is called skin drag. To really think about skin drag, think about your own skin as a human being. If you look at your body in the mirror, you're going to look at yourself and you're going to be like, wow, particularly me. Whoa, I look at myself and I'm like, man, whoa, I look good. But when you say yourself look good, you also know that you have a lot of imperfections in your skin. You may look at yourself and say like, oh, the skin right here is a shade lighter or darker than right here. I have a bump right here, or I have a scar right here. I have, you go through your whole body and there's all these little imperfections. Those are the things that just make you perfect, that make you who you are. Well, guess what? Your plane is the exact same way. It has those imperfections. I don't care how good it looks on the outside. You just got that thing sprayed, candy painted, looking good. It doesn't matter. It got small little imperfections. Some of them may even be not even aware of to the naked eye. You got to get right on top of it, very close to it, to see those microscopic imperfections. Whereas it's floating through the air, and as you're sliding the aircraft through the air is hitting that, and based on that skin type, how you can look at this wing and there may be subtle little imperfections along the way. It's connecting with that a little bit differently and creating a little bit of drag. It may be a scratch here, a bump here, those kinds of things. Just think of it just like it's your own skin. It's not going to all relate at the same place because it's not all perfect as it floats through the air like that. That's kind of what you want to think about when you're thinking about skin drag and the drag that can create on your aircraft for Parasite drag. Hey, and these are the different types of drag that can impact you in flight. Don't forget to like this video, comment, subscribe, share this video. I am Donovan Batiste. Hey, this is Leadership Mindset. Subscribe to this channel for more free content about everything that you need to know for you to become a pilot. And if you're already a pilot, these good information can help you stay current, help you stay proficient. Hey, love you one time. Let go. Subscribe to this channel.